Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor-Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair.
and me, Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker. Our guest today is Jacqueline Vogtman. Jacqueline Vogtman's fiction has appeared in Hunger Mountain, Permafrost, The Literary Review, Smokelong Quarterly, Third Coast, and other journals. A graduate of the MFA program at Bowling Green State University, she is currently Associate Professor of English at Mercer County Community College. She has lived in New Jersey most of her life and resides in a small town surrounded by nature, which she explores with her husband, daughter, and dog. Girl Country is her first book. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are pleased that you were able to join us. So you say on your website that in previous jobs, you've done a lot of different things, from cleaning churches to proofreading greeting cards. How did those varied experiences prepare you for becoming a writer, or perhaps influence your writing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Most of the jobs I had prior to going to grad school and starting to teach really didn't have anything, directly to do with writing or even really anything creative. But I think, if you're a writer, pretty much anything you do, even if it's a totally off the wall job that has nothing to do with writing or the arts, can serve as inspiration. And so, and especially I think sometimes those jobs that don't require that much brain power, like cleaning, you can let your imagination kind of run wild while you're doing those jobs. And I think just, getting experience outside of academia and, outside of that world can help, because you meet different people and kind of talk to people from all walks of life and that kind of thing. So I think in that way, it probably, inspired me in some way.
In the title story, Girl Country, and the second story, Once Bound for Earth, you take us into a pretty bleak near-future world of multiple ecological and economic crises. The first features a farmer who saves a girl from a life of being literally milked for a cancer cure for the rich, who then saves him. And the other stars a bus driver who ferries a load of passengers to safety, people society forgot, from possible nuclear fallout. So what do you hang on to that keeps you hopeful for the future?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I thought I was going like in a different direction. Like, why do you write about all these end of the world type of stories? But what keeps me hopeful? Oh gosh. Well, I think I feel like I'm a pretty hopeful person overall. I think even my bleakest stories, there's sort of a hopefully a light, a light there, a light at the end of the tunnel, or some kind of light. I think, there's always, beauty even in the, and even magic and sort of miraculous things, even in the sort of darkest places. And so I think, even just nature, walking around, looking at the sky, looking at the trees, gives me hope. The sort of regeneration of the earth, the cycles, things die, but then they come back, and even just my own family, children, seeing that, the younger generation, cares about things. My daughter's in like an environmental club at school, and they're really, gung-ho about saving the earth and that kind of thing. So those sort of things give me hope, I guess.
Some of the stories in Girl Country also feature the fantastic, like the one about a woman who bears a series of children who are from another time, and another about an obelisk that just drops into a small town and people disappear into it. Can you tell us what inspires your work, or when or how do you know that a really unique idea is worth pursuing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like the simplest answer is that, in terms of ideas worth pursuing, maybe this is a bad quality, but any kind of wacky off the wall idea that I have, I feel is worth pursuing. I kind of just write them all down and I'm like, I want to go with that. I don't care if it's like weird or wacky, or maybe it won't come to anything. But I think a lot of writers or artists have, I mean, maybe it's almost an ego thing. Maybe this is a flaw, but it's like, I think my ideas are great, so I'm going to go with them. But yeah, I mean, I was really inspired when I first started writing fiction, because I started as a poet, or I thought I was a poet for a very long time when I was young, until my last year of undergrad. And then I started writing fiction. And when I fell in love with fiction, I fell in love with those types of stories, the fantastical, and not really straight up fantasy, nothing sort of in that hard genre, but magical realism, and stories that used, fantastic elements to sort of reveal something about the real world, or the world that we live in, to serve as kind of metaphors for that. And so, I fell in love with that type of style, and that's kind of, how I started writing, and just how I kind of continued, because to me, writing straight realism, I feel like I was never very good at it, but also I'm not that interested in it. I think magic is all around us, in sometimes very subtle ways, and sometimes not so subtle. But I like to kind of exaggerate certain things and use them as metaphors for real life. So.
And that kind of leads us into the next question, that process of exploration, sort of pushing the envelope on a story. Maybe the most arresting title in this collection is The Mermaid and the Pornographer. Mm-hmm. So what was it that what inspired that story? And what is it that you're hoping readers see in it? What kind of transformation do you see?
So that's a kind of funny one. It's the one I'm probably most embarrassed about, when my daughter's looking at my table of contents. I'm like, oh God, don't ask me about that. Okay. But this was my oldest story that made its way into this book. I think it was written in 2008, 2009, when I was in grad school. So, 3 of the stories from grad school ended up in the book, and that's one of them. And the inspiration is very simple and silly. My then boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, had said to me, I think I got out of the shower and my hair was kind of curly or something. He was like, it's like mermaid porn or something. He just said, I don't know. Because my hair, mermaid hair is like that. And I was like, this is going back to, I think all my ideas are great, or anything I hear from other people, I'm going to write it down. Hey, that sparks an idea in me. Let me write it down, and I'm going to make it into something. And so I wrote it down. I'm like, I'm going to write a story about a pornographer who finds a mermaid and tries to use her, so I did. So I wrote it, and it changed a little bit over the years. I initially did publish it back when I wrote it in grad school in a small journal called the Berkeley Fiction Review, which I think is still running. But after that, when I was putting the book together and I was revising the story, I kind of, I didn't change that much about it, but I did tweak some things, because I felt like we were in a different moment. Like my initial story, I think, was a little more almost too sympathetic to the pornographer in a way. And so my revisions, for the book, when I was revising it, I felt like I wanted to be at least a little bit harder on him. I mean, I think it's still pretty sympathetic to his situation, and it's in close third in his point of view, but I wanted at least some of the characters to push back on him and say, hey, you better do the right fucking thing, you better don't exploit this person anymore. I think his housekeeper or something says something like that to him, and by the end I think he kind of realizes his wrongs. And again, it's still probably maybe too sympathetic to him, but it felt like this was in a way, like a Me Too type of story. Like the mermaid is this person who's being exploited by this, director of sorts. So anyway, I don't know. I feel like I might have gone off on a tangent. Not sure if I answered the question there, but.
You did.
Okay.
So you've talked a little little bit about how you fell in love with fiction, how you came to that sort of moving away from poetry. Who are some of the writers that have influenced you in your writing the most, or that you admire greatly?
So, thinking back to like when I really decided I think I want to go with writing fiction versus poetry, as my kind of major when I went to my MFA, Anthony Doerr's first collection of short stories, which was called The Shell Collector, was a huge inspiration to me. And, at the time he wasn't like super famous yet. Now he's incredibly famous with All the Light We Cannot See and all of his other famous books. But that his book of short stories, just the way I think what drew me to him was just the very deep compassion or empathy that he has for his characters. And so there's sort of a subtle magic in his as well. And so he was a big inspiration. And then Amy Bender was another one, again, because of the fantastical elements, and Karen Russell, with the magical realism. Other than them, Toni Morrison obviously is a huge, huge name and such a huge inspiration to me, and so many others. I love a lot of old stuff too, Virginia Woolf and James Joyce and like all the Faulkner and all those modernists and stuff. But sort of the more recent ones I think were Toni Morrison, Karen Russell, Anthony Doerr.
Well, like Dor, a lot of your work is features some heartbreaking stories about people who survive. And in When the Tree Grows This High, a young couple finally find their way to love and then lose it in war. And in The Preservation of Lost Objects at Sea, which is a lovely title, two people who experience the same trauma differently help each other heal. And so what do you think helps ordinary people become survivors? And what brings you to observe that and share that in your work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think I'm thinking of like Anthony Doerr's short story called The Caretaker, which was from his first collection. And I just love the way that the two characters, the Joseph and the young woman that he meets kind of save each other, help each other. And so I think that some of the stories in here, maybe even especially the title story, Girl Country, we have characters who are struggling that in some way, maybe even without meaning to, help each other or save each other. So there's that element of it. But I think also maybe it's also like an internal journey of healing. So like in the story Once Bound for Earth with Janet, she kind of goes, there's this external journey that's happening where she's trying to kind of like save these kids from the end of the world. But there's also like an internal kind of healing journey that's going on where she's thinking about her son and, the tragedy that happened to him and how she kind of held herself accountable and blamed herself. But by the end kind of comes to a realization that, she did all she could and she tried as hard as she could. And, she loved him and all of that. And so there's a sort of an internal healing journey alongside the external journeys that they're undergoing.
In addition to your own writing, you edit a literary magazine, Kelsey Review. So what do you look for in other people's writing as an editor?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the magazine I edit, it's like a very local magazine where we take submissions from people who live in Mercer County, New Jersey. And we don't get, a huge amount of submissions, but the submissions, like what I look for when I'm editing, I think it's kind of what I'm looking for as a reader in general. I want obviously sort of the basics craft stuff there, but I like stories that move me. I mean, I think that's really the first thing. If it moves me, then even if there are some technical things wrong with it, I'll probably just work with them to try to publish it. So compassion, empathy for the characters, allowing the reader to feel that. And, I do look for things that are a little bit different. I think, and this probably all editors do this, but, if you read the same type of story over and over again, it gets very boring. And so finding things that are maybe a little bit experimental, nothing, off the wall, just experimenting for experimentation's sake, but just things that are a little bit different, a little bit fresh, in terms of perspective, or just even in terms of story and who you're writing about. I think that's what I look for.
And you also work with younger writers. How do you recognize talent and help people find or develop their voices?
Yeah, I mean, so I work with, I teach at a community college, and I mostly teach composition. So it's essay writing. It's not really creative writing, but I do work with the creative writing club there. And so I do get to kind of dip into that world a little bit and help out those writers as well. I think one of the things that I try to do, whether it's for writing in composition or writing creatively, is, encourage students to follow their uniqueness rather than necessarily always being so concerned with the rules. And I think in both composition and creative writing, you have students who sometimes, just out of sort of a fear, think that they have to like follow certain rules. And it's like, no, it's okay. I mean, yes, we do need the basics. We need to know the basics, but everyone's voice is different. And figuring out what that is, first of all, you got to figure it out, and then kind of following that through is, I think, the way to kind of find yourself as a writer.
And you're busy with family and prep and marking and stuff right now, but are you finding time to write anything new right now?
Here and there. Yeah, I haven't been as good at keeping up with my writing schedule lately. So when I was finishing the book, before even it was public, before it was picked up by Dzanc, it was my project and I wanted to finish it. And so I was highly motivated to like get up super early every single day and write and sit down. And it worked out really well that I wrote a lot of stories in a short period of time. And I was really productive and really happy and really creative. And then once the book got picked up and then we were working on the edits, that I, was motivated by that, and we were doing that. And then once it was published, it was like, oh gosh, now where do I go? What do I do? And so some of that motivation to, get up early and get the writing done kind of fell off. And so I haven't been doing as much. But in a way, it's nice because it feels like it's kind of opened up some space to do other things. So I've been writing a little bit of poetry, which I hadn't done in a really long time. And I feel like poetry is kind of like my first love, and the way it feels like to me is like, the fiction is who I married, so I'm married to fiction, but poetry is my first love. I'll always look fondly at poetry. So it's nice to like go back to it a little bit. And so I'm doing a little bit of that. And then I have a novel that I'm hoping to write, but I haven't really sat down to start it yet, but I'm writing down a lot of notes. I have a notebook that I just kind of am always jotting down notes and thoughts in. And lots of just random things like screenplay ideas. And I've never written a screenplay before, but it would be fun, right? So I'm always jotting down new ideas. Hopefully I'll be able to sit down and actually start a new project soon.
That all sounds like a wonderful creative fallow period. So yeah, everybody needs a little of that, right? So would you like to read a little bit of Girl Country for our audience?
Sure. Trying to think. I think I would like to read, maybe I'll read the beginning of A Love Letter from Very Far Away, about the obelisks. A love letter from very far away. The first obelisk appeared in a cornfield outside our town of Bowling Green, Ohio, just a few years after we'd survived the latest pandemic, right when we thought things were returning to normal. It probably wasn't the right word for the structure, obelisk, but that's how the first article referred to it, and the name stuck. It was 30 feet tall and pretty wide, a sideways trapezoid stuck into the earth by one of its sharp corners. The surface was smooth black like obsidian, though the scientists who tested it said that's not what it was. They ultimately admitted, rather sheepishly, they couldn't tell what it was. It started out as a local wonder. News stations referred to it as an object of mysterious origin, or OMO, Alien enthusiasts from neighboring counties came by the dozen and made comparisons to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Parents took their children to gaze and wonder and try to climb the thing with no luck. Our own son was 17 at the time, teetering on the edge of adulthood, but even we took him once. He stood there, disinterested, staring instead at his phone, and you and I, we simply regarded our reflections in the glassy black of the trapezoid surface, wondering what would happen to us when he eventually left the nest. What would we have to hold us together? Soon, the structures popped up in other places across the country. First, another cornfield, this one in Iowa. Then a farm in upstate New York, beside Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana, on a mountaintop in Colorado, in the middle of the Arizona desert, right along the border in New Mexico, in an alleyway in Oakland, cracking concrete, and finally in the Badlands, where no one noticed for a while. The first obelisk arrived on the spring equinox. By the time we realized they were popping up all over the country, the politicians were rabid. They assumed it was an act of aggression from another country. They speculated that the material might emit some kind of dangerous energy. Local officials roped off the structures with police tape, a large yellow square of at least 100 yards on each side. It reminded me of those years back when the pandemic hit and the playgrounds were closed off with caution tape, as if they were crime scenes. Our son was 9 then, at an age when he still sometimes asked to go to the playground, but was beginning to prefer video games. When the playgrounds closed, he happily resigned himself to pre-teenagehood, and I, of course, mourned. While new buds shivered in the wind, politicians argued about who sent the obelisks and why, throwing accusations like cherry bombs. By summer, though, these structures had been spotted in almost every country across the world, dotting the globe like jagged black jewels. Some of those on the far right took a different angle. They were no longer a threat, but a gift from God. They argued that America had received more of these blessings than any other country because America was the most blessed country on earth. They urged local officials to remove the yellow tape and encouraged all Christians to flock to the rocks. Flock to the rock even became a national catchphrase for a while. Some began setting up camp there, the most devout followers making fervent attempts to chip away at the obelisks, hoping to collect fragments like the relics of saints. The structures, though, could not be broken, not even a sliver. That in itself should have proven these things were alien in origin. Human-made things are always so fragile, so quick to fall apart. I think I'll end there.
Jacqueline Vogtman, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your new book, Girl Country, with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.